All right, so welcome back. And what we'll do today is we will do a quick review of what we did yesterday so that we go through the spiral again, because it's so important to know that we all have all of the spiral in us. And that even at those very lowest levels that we consider low and beneath us, they are still within us. So just to remind you that this first beige through green is what we call the first tier, and that is the personality development. And the beige is the root chakra, purple is the sacral chakra, red is the solar plexus. It's the power chakra. It's the beginning of the personality. It's I, me, mine. It's the first expression of true me-ness. Blue is the heart. And of course, it's not the full expression of the heart. It's the opening of the heart. It's where we learn to interact with others. Orange is the mind. It's the throat chakra. And it's the beginning of the concrete, rational mind. And then green is the higher mind. It's the beginning. It's the opening of the ajna. And so it's that beginning of higher mind. And that green then becomes the spear point into the second tier. It is not guaranteed that we automatically emerge into the second tier. It's not a guarantee. What can happen is there can be a dropping back and to any of the levels and have to do the climb up again. But we all are forgers into that second tier. And it's also important to remember that these are not people. You know, we are not blue or green or yellow people, but they are ways of being and ways of thinking. And again, we all have all of them in us. And we tend to have a certain center of gravity. So we'll talk about that too on our political scene. So then the second tier is the yellow, turquoise, and coral. And one of the things that this diagram demonstrates so beautifully is not only that every meme, every level has all of the colors in it, but also that when you get up to that second tier, it's way more complex. It's way bigger. There's a lot more there. And so again, there's a lot more possibility there. Okay, so we're going to revisit the terms, which I went over just a few of yesterday. And just a few key things. Meme, I'm not going to give you the whole history of meme. For our purposes, it's a worldview. And if you remember what Cassandra said when she talked to us about how we change, you know, 10% is information, even though most of the change agency in the world goes after information as if it were 100%. Another 10% is motivation. But truly, that 80% that's left is worldview. So we're going to talk about how do we change worldview. And so we talked about Maslow. Clare Graves was the one who first developed this process, and he called it the emergent cyclic double helix adult code of biopsychosocial development. And so one of the key words in this is emergent. You know, one of Helena's favorite words is unfoldment. Emergent is another way of saying that. DK says that the soul is the driver of evolution. And this is evolution. You know, we are watching evolution here. And that emergent is what happens when a level either gets filled up or fed up. And oftentimes it's crisis that drives us to the next level. We see that historically, that it takes a crisis to bring forth that new way of thinking, that new way of being. And we all know that we're at a crisis point now. We are at a crisis point not only in our country, but in the world. And it is believed by those in the integral world that this is, you know, we are the spearhead of the next emergent meme. And so that's one of the really important things. Cyclic, we'll do another picture of that. The double helix means that there is this way that it moves up like this, kind of like the double helix, and life conditions that the meme, the values and the intelligences tend to mirror the life conditions. If the life conditions are not there, then the meme cannot develop. So if we go into a country where people are extremely poor and we want to take capitalism in there and we want to show them how to be, you know, good world citizens, it's not there for them. The life conditions are not there. They have not evolved through all the layers of the intelligences and values to be able to get that higher level. We do not jump stages. We have to move through all the stages. And this will be very important also when we talk about the political scene in America. So life conditions, incredibly important. Life conditions are the time, place, environment, and circumstances at play in any given personal or world space. So this is at both a very personal level and at a more global level. And Ken Wilber, again, was where I discovered this, first of all, because when he discovered it, it became front and center in his system. And one of his important discoveries was he was always trying to understand all the different ways that people think, how the scientists think, how the meditators think, how the relational people think, how the systems people think. And he said, doggone, you know, it's like they're all right. And it seems like in some way that they're all related. And what he finally came to was everybody's right, but they're not equally right. But it's really important to know that at every level of the, every level of this escalation is correct. It's correct for their life conditions, it's correct for where they are. And another Ken Wilber thought is that spirit is all the way down. Spirit is not only at our meme, and this is another thing that people tend to think, especially the fourth meme tends to think that they have a lock on spirit. Well, at the green meme, we think we have the lock on spirit, and at the second tier, we think we have the lock on spirit too. We think ours is the best way, right? Right? So that's always the personality talking. But what happens at second tier is there genuinely becomes an understanding that everybody is right and that all of them have tremendous value in terms of the evolution of not only a human being, but the whole human species. Okay. Okay, so another thing from Ken Wilber is transcend and include. So one of the key things that he talked about was when you emerge into the next meme, you include everything below. When you emerge into the next meme, you include everything below. And this is really important because at the second tier, it's really not until the second tier that becomes a conscious idea. Because when we move through the personality tiers, every time we move up a tier, we think, ugh, done with that, not me anymore. And that becomes, again, part of the battle in that personality levels, that it becomes not me anymore, so we tend to not like those things that we've left behind, such as many of us have left behind certain church kind of traditions, and we're like, oh, really? How can they think like that? How can they be so rigid? How can they be so fundamentalist? And waking up and growing up. This is the only time in human history that we know of where it was possible to both wake up in the spiritual sense. So the Eastern traditions have all dealt with waking up, truly becoming spiritually awake. In the Western world, we've dealt with growing up. So we have all these different systems of human development. And this is the first time in history where we can both wake up and grow up. And what that means is that spiral can become truly healthy and truly gifted in terms of what it can give. Because not only can we understand how spirit is working in all of this at a high level, but also we can clear up the stuff along the way so that we are functional, highly functional. Okay, and then Don Beck is the one who wrote the book, Spiral Dynamics, and he came up with a bunch of ideas, but some of his key ideas are stratified democracies, and we'll talk about that, thrive and help thrive. So instead of live and let live, he says thrive and help thrive. That's a second tier way of approaching societies. And the spiral is my client. He gets called in by all kinds of different countries, sports teams, businesses, and they'll come in, like a bank will contact him and say, we want you to come in, we want you to work with our tellers, we want you to work with our line staff down there because they're just not getting the marketing ideas. And he'll say, whoa, 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 nope, got to work with everybody. So he'll come in and he has to work through all the levels because you have to understand all the levels in order to get buy-in from everybody for the purpose of the whole business. Okay, so this again, just very briefly, shows how there is this cyclic way that the energies move from individual focus to collective focus. And each time you can see, with each wave, it gets deeper, it gets fuller. And then this is a visual from What is Enlightenment, the magazine. And one of the really important things is this idea down here, the streams of development. And this was a contribution by Wilber. And so he said all of us are on a bar graph. If we looked at all of us, we would look at, you know, our cognitive growth and our musical intelligence and our artistic intelligence and our emotional intelligence, and you could put it on a bar graph. And so if you think of one of our primary people in politics right now that probably has a, you know, a political level probably in the blue-red area, has a cognitive level definitely in the orange area because he's smart. I'm giving you hints, obviously. And has been able to accomplish at that level of achievement, of capitalism, of money, of status, but at an emotional, empathetic, spiritual, and moral level, pretty much in the red zone. Okay? So one of the questions that we hit on last time was, do we have a red president? Well, we certainly have a president that has a red center of gravity that tends to drop there often. It's not the whole picture of him, though, because he clearly has a mind that is bright enough that he's been able to accomplish quite a lot, being president of the United States. And the other thing is this, the circle up in the left-hand corner. The integral person who realizes that we have to work on all these parts of ourselves. The individual self, the group self. So how am I with myself? How am I on self-knowledge? How am I on other knowledge? And also work on our interiors, what's going on inside of me, and our exteriors, like our actual human body, our ecology, our systems. Very important key idea for him as well. Okay, so now we're going to zoom ahead. And again, we'll go very quickly through the memes. Beige is that first meme. It is basic physiology. It's human drives. It's what, there's not any consciousness really so much of self. It's just all about survival, all about living. And we have a few human beings still on the planet like this. And really important that that first meme be fulfilled in a healthy way, because the rest of the memes cannot be fulfilled in a healthy way if that one is not. We have to build on health to have health. Okay, and then the purple meme is the tribal meme. This is the child from 1 to 3, so this is the sacral area. And this is a we, us, our. This is where the child learns about there are others and there is family. There is safety and there is not safety. There are these tribes in the world as well. And one of the key things in this meme is that Don Beck, who again studied of how this works in the world, went and worked with the Bushmen and with the Aborigines, and he found that they had 16 or 17 different sensory intelligences that we don't have, that modern man doesn't have. Intelligences like the capacity to hear deep into the bush, to be able to feel on the earth movement that we would not be able to pick up at all, to be able to detect and predict weather patterns just by how they're feeling in their bodies. Remote viewing, to be able to see things in remote areas, to have extraordinary memories of things. So these intelligences, once we get to another level, we tend to eschew them, like, no, not that. You know, that's old, that's superstitious, we're not that anymore. But in fact, at the second tier, these come back. You know, these intelligences come back, and we see them as cities. You know, we see them as extrasensory powers. And so again, this big change happened at the end of the Ice Age when more human beings came upon the earth because there were more resources for more human beings to grow. And tribal, Nelson Mandela, I mean, I could talk for an hour just on Nelson Mandela because he was one of the key people. Don Beck actually went to South Africa to work with him because when Nelson was in prison, he read about Don Beck's work. And he realized that this was something that his country could use. And our purple tribalism happens through our sports teams and through our fantasy life, through Disney, and sometimes in very dark ways. And then we talked about the rivers, how in the purple meme, in the tribal meme, everything has life. You know, the purple meme, the tribal people, they understand. The natives understand. All my relations means everything is alive. Rivers are alive, and trees are alive, and the sky is alive. And so it was really that deep purple meme that gave meaning to the fact of naming these rivers. 2 rivers in New Zealand and then 2 rivers in India were named by their respective governments as living entities, and they were given the same rights as human beings. Okay, so red meme is the child. This is the willful child. This is 3 to 6. This is the I want it and I want it now. And you know, we expect this in children. We don't find it very attractive in adults. But so it's the power meme. You know, it's the essence of personal power. In a good sense, it's that first expression of me. It's that first expression in the world of I am here and I am separate from you. But when it becomes something that becomes institutionalized, it is usually as a dictatorship and not in a positive way. So it's power-driven, oppressive, brutal, bloodthirsty, guiltless and shameless. Very important, guiltless and shameless. Again, if you think about our president, you know, he seems pretty guiltless and shameless. And daring, risk-taking, narcissistic, and domineering, very fear-driven. They are themselves very fear-driven. If you think about children between the ages of 3 and 6, they're quite fear-driven. They're fearful about many things, of the dark, of strangers, of monsters under the bed. And so over history, this historical period began 10,000 years ago and was the age of empires. So Nelson Mandela was a revolutionary. When he started his work, he started out, he was an attorney, he was a lawyer, and he wanted Africa for Africans. And he saw how brutally unfair the regime was in South Africa. And he first started out in a nonviolent way, and he was inspired by Martin Luther King and by Jesus and by Gandhi. And he realized pretty soon that it was not working in South Africa. And so he chose very judiciously and very targeted, in a very targeted way, to use violence. And he went to prison for it, for life. And a quote from him is, "It always seems impossible until it's done." So daring, risk-taking, charismatic, and heroic. And we see then these young men also are trying to be daring, risk-taking, charismatic, and heroic. And so again, red has a very positive sense to it as well. Anytime we see someone that achieves in a very personal and powerful way, like the Olympic champions. Alex Gray with his audacious artwork. Yo-Yo Ma, he said, when I get in front of an audience, it becomes just all about me and my relationship to them. That's a very healthy expression of that red meme. Okay, so we're going to revisit this man. So blue then becomes the place where we learn about other. It becomes the place where we not only learn about others, our heart begins to open. We realize that we need to relate to other to be happy in the world. If we're still at that very narcissistic I, me, mine stage, we are not going to be successful in the world. And so we need to learn this. And so this is the time of 5,000 years ago. This is a we, us, our expression. So it's a collective expression. And it was the time when these great thought systems, when the great moral codes came into being, the Temple of Solomon, the Tower of Babel, the Egyptians, they came in with these incredible systems of thought and of order and meaning. And they began to give purpose to life beyond, to give people something to look toward beyond just the me existence. And it became incredibly important. So schools are very important in this because it's where children learn a whole lot about who they are and what the world is about. And you can see how these different schools are teaching very different senses of what the world is about. And again, this is the age where children swallow things whole. So Jesus walking on water is equally real as Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. And it's all real. And it's not until one gets to another stage that one starts to think about, is Santa Claus really real? And did Jesus really walk on water? So the truth is given by God to us alone. This is a very ethnocentric stage. Is given by God to us and us alone. So it's the development of morality. It's a key aspect of the blue meme. And it's when we have the grand narratives of the Bible and the Quran and the different mythologies. And we also have tremendous growth of beauty both in these moral codes and in these thought systems, but also tremendous beauty expressed through the buildings and through the ways that people gather together. And so community is incredibly important in this. This is also the meme of the transcendent God. This is the God unapproachable. So it's about God transcendent and unknowable. He wields the power. It's also really important in our political understanding to understand that this blue meme, Ken Wilber said about 15 years ago that he thought that the country was about evenly split between the blue and the green meme, between the ethnocentric conservatives and the more progressive green thinkers. And so they were about evenly split. And that the blue meme is all about salvation. It's all about damnation. It's very dualistic. It's me and you, good and evil, this and that, and there's one right way. And the progressives are branching out into there are many right ways. But one of the key attributes of the blue conservatives is they are absolutely against gay rights. They are against gay marriage. They feel that it is abomination to the Bible. And they are absolutely against abortion. So and immigration is kind of iffy because immigration is a bad thing if it is affecting my circle of people. Because again, it's ethnocentric. So it might be okay for immigration if it's a boon to my people, but if it's a threat to my people, then that's bad also. So you've got these three things, and when you've got a progressive candidate like Hillary Clinton, who believed in all of those things, she was pro-choice, she was pro-gay rights, and she was pro-immigration, it's a blue level. It's like, no, absolutely not. Anybody who believes like that is not going to be my candidate. So, and the fact that she is and was a woman also worked against her because the God, the supreme authority in the last 5,000 years has been male, and it worked against her. So I'm not going to go into detail, but this is you can find this on the internet, but this is Osama, not Obama, sorry about that, Osama bin Laden telling us what the 5 features of fundamentalism are. And they are dualism, above all, incredibly dualistic system. There is, an absolute right and wrong. And paranoia, very afraid of what is not mine, what is not my group, what is not me. And an apocalyptic obsession. There is this belief that at the end there is going to be this great something that is going to destroy the world, and we will be saved because we are the right ones. Charismatic leadership, very important that you have charismatic leadership here because the blue meme has to have a strong authority, and typically they have to have a strong male authority. And then the totalized conversion experience. When you're in it, you are wholly in it, and wholly in both ways. And so this is why this meme is so compelling and can last for lifetimes, because it's very compelling to believe that I have the one right way. I know that because I have accepted Jesus into my heart that I am saved and I don't need to worry. There is a tremendous sense of safety and security and reassurance in that. And when one loses that, one loses one's grounding, and so this blue meme also is very intent on keeping their children grounded in this. We talked about Mother Antonia. We talked about how patriotism and nationalism are also very much of the blue meme, and it looks exactly the same whether it's with the Americans and the Christians or the Muslims and the ISIS folks, same thing. So now we move into the orange meme, and the orange meme is the rational development. It's the development of the throat chakra. And just explosion of things here. 1,000 years ago, so many things happened in this time. And Robert's film talked about how in the middle of this time that even the approach to initiation changed because of the fast development of the mind in man, where the spiritual hierarchy began to see that now we are going to impress humanity through intuitive means because the mind has been sufficiently developed. But we see still that the mind is being developed and that we are still developing our minds. And it's really important to know, again, on the political scene, that in first world countries, including the United States, where we have education, that orange meme is available to everyone, but not everyone makes it solidly into the orange meme. Very many people in our country and in other countries blue meme as their center of gravity, because we tend to be emotional beings, and if your emotional center is blue and your religious center is blue, you're going to tend to drop into that as your dominant sense. And of course, we have very intelligent conservative people, you know, that still hold to those very conservative values, but are incredibly intelligent in their minds. But this orange meme then becomes the spearhead into the green. And in order to have that next progression into the green, well, let's go through the orange here first. So the orange meme is the rational emergence. Tremendous things happen in this time. It tends to be the teenage time. Parents of teenagers that are fundamentalists are very nervous about their children getting education, because what the American Christians, the fundamentalist Christians, often see is their kids go off to college, and the college teachers are encouraging them to think about everything, including what the values that they grew up with. And when the kids start to look at these things, they come home and they go, yeah, you know, I'm not sure I believe all this stuff. And it worries the parents. And so there was a big movement about 15, 20 years ago, in California anyway, where the Christian fundamentalists really tried to take over the school systems because they could see how this was happening. Very unnerving to them. So we see that the teenage years are the years. And you see at the bottom here, this is the 6 of the most badass teenage girls of 2015. And I knew when my millennial daughter told me that one of my friends was a badass that I had arrived. But you'll see that Malala is one of the badass girls. Do you know what badass means? Okay, good. You were ahead of me then. And so it's money is very important at this stage. You know, kids want. I mean, it was about 25 years ago that the advertisers realized that, whoa, have we got a huge market here in the teenagers. We need to start gearing movies and ads and everything to them. And competition. You know, this is the show-off age. This is where everybody on the boy stage, on the girl stage, wants to look like this and like this. So, you know, this is wanting to have fun, wanting to feel my freedom, wanting to feel me. You know, this again is another I, me, mine. Very, very powerful me expression. And of course we have teenage rebellion, which is sometimes very unattractive. And so competition and monetary success are huge players in this. Technology and medicine have made huge advances in the orange meme. And you know, very many of our doctors and very many of us who work either with esoteric healing modalities or are seeking out alternative healing modalities bump up against the orange meme in our doctor population, who are all about the facts. You know, don't tell me about that woo-woo thing. You know, it's all about the data. And so and there, of course, are many downsides to the dumping of tons of waste into the rivers is also an outcome of the orange meme. But this, again, this was for Donald Trump, because here he is visualizing his great buildings. And anything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Napoleon Hill, huge growth of manas, of monastic mind in the last century. And you know, it was pretty smart, really, how those who are impulsing this did it, because they did it in a way that really caught people by their emotional selves to teach them to develop their minds. Because all of these things, the power of positive thinking, Think and Grow Rich, the prosperity gospel, it's all about using your mind and the reality that energy follows thought. And so well, we'll get to that in a minute. So this is Shanghai. In 1997, Red China assumed Hong Kong. And Hong Kong became this shining star in the country of China. And China realized they had to decide what they were going to do, if they were going to try and stay within that very tight Confucian communist blue meme, or if they were going to allow capitalism to come in. Well, it's like Don Beck said, that when they assumed Hong Kong, they swallowed the orange pill. And in 20 years, this is what Shanghai looks like. You know, incredible that this happens in 20 years. And so what happens on the planet, when there is an extant meme on the planet, everything gets touched by it. And so when the life conditions are ready, it can emerge very quickly. So China has become a dominant orange power, right? Okay, so very interesting things happen spiritually and religiously in the orange meme. because there is this capacity to think about thinking, to think about what the thought forms are, what our values are, there is a lot of agnosticism. There's a lot of kind of scientific agnosticism in the orange meme. And a lot of the scientists that are researchers and doctors, they're like, don't talk to me about that spiritual stuff. That's woo-woo stuff. That's superstition. That's from the time before. We don't believe in that. We're scientists. And so this, I don't know if you can see it, but this in the, this is a little poster here. The atheist said, there is no God, there is no such existence. And the agnostic says, I don't know if there is or isn't any existence of God. But the militant agnostic said, I don't know, and you don't either. And Richard Dawkins is a very ardent fundamentalist atheist. And this is very interesting because this is the evolution of the blue meme into orange. So early in our country's history, we had these churches, these little communities of people that believed ardently and fervently in what they believed in, which was Jesus Christ and salvation. And what we see now is those churches are diminishing down to very small populations of gray-haired people. But what is happening is those ministers that have taken on the prosperity gospel, meaning they're bringing in more of the New Age thought, they have the booming churches. They have these mega churches. So again, it's the orange meme seeping into that blue meme. So this is just more of the prosperity gospel. But again, prosperity gospel, very important because Donald Trump was raised in that. He was a part of Norman Vincent Peale's church, which was a big church in Manhattan. And Power of Positive Thinking, his dad was a member. The big business magnates of the day were members. And so he grew up with this idea that he just needed to think it into being. And by God, he thought himself into being as the President of the United States. And love him or hate him, you got to acknowledge that this man has mastered something on this level. The rules of magic do not guarantee the outcome, right? They only guarantee the possibility. And he used those rules of thought magic. And I'm not saying I don't think he's a black magician, but I do think that he's working through 50 Shades of Grey. So humanity is the planetary light bearer in every way. DK says both esoterically and exoterically, humanity is the light bearer. So the green meme then is the sensitive self. This is I think, the drop down for those of us that identify with the second tier. This is where we are likely to drop down to. We believe in other. We are the sensitive selves. This was the flower children of the 60s who became the boomers that are now populating the world. And this is a young adult stage. And again, not everybody gets here. Donald Trump is not here. And he is ardently not here. And when you realize that people that don't have these values, well, number one, if you'll remember, you have to go through that orange meme and have some measure of success in the orange meme of monetary success, educational success, achievement, success of I in the world, in order to be able to grant that to other people. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's the only way it happens. So when they talk about all the poor people that voted for Trump, they have no idea about this. They do not have the life conditions to allow them to emerge into that green meme. They don't have the receptors for this information. So Hillary Clinton, who talks very much from this man, I think is, as a center of gravity in the green meme, absolutely, again, anathema. It's like, not hearing you, sister, not with you, not my vote. So she had several things going against her. Being a woman, believing in rights for gays and for abortion and for immigrants. And then, the real killer was she was a progressive. She talked about the rest of the world when, doggone it, in my little nation, in my little town, we don't have enough right now. I want you to focus on me and mine, not on the rest of the world. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the first true worldview: community and unity, humanitarian, egalitarian, fair, care, share, ecology. When in the 90s, when the United States, we really need you guys to get on board because you're the biggest polluters in the world. Hello, they weren't there. They were still to the blue meme to get everybody fed and to get everybody shelter, and they didn't care about the rest of the world. So But again, it's like the green thinks that because we're there and we know that we have the superior view, that we're going to go and share it with the world. Well, if the world is not ready to hear it, they are not going to hear it. And China couldn't hear it. Now, China's big on board with it, right? Because they have the capacity. They now have been through the orange meme, a lot of success on that level. And now they can understand, well, and it's for their own benefit too. They understand that they need to get on board with the ecological movement because it's going to benefit them. So this is when human rights, all the human rights came on board. Civil rights, women's and children's rights, gay rights. And love. Love became a genuine value in policymaking, education, and world affairs, expressed itself as fair, care, and share. Everyone deserves their place in the sun. Equality for everyone. Intuition began to flower, okay? So this is the opening of the Ajna Center. Intuition is beginning to flower. And again, this is why the Buddhist approach is so appealing to this level, because it's be a lamp unto yourself. Do not look outside of yourself. And at the blue meme, it's all about follow the authority, follow the book. And at the green meme, it's like not trusting that anymore. You know, like had enough of the orange meme, had enough success, thank you very much, yeah, that was good, but I'm looking for more meaning. I'm looking for something more. And there's a tendency to look within. So of course, you know, the term used in spiral dynamics is inherent adaptive intelligence, which, and this is what drives everything, okay? Inherent adaptive intelligence drives this emergence and this growth and this moving through the memes. We could say that's another term for soul, right? Inherent adaptive intelligence. So again, this image that changed all of us to see our planet as something that we all share, this little fragile globe floating in dark space. And here all of the green's environmental goals and values. And here the green worldview, equality, fairness, and justice for all, and the confusion of equality and sameness. So this is really important because this is the stunning failure of the green meme. Can you read that? Is that big enough? Can you? Yeah? Okay. Extreme relativism, because everybody and everything is equal, it flattens all the values into a false sameness. Green meme resists judgments and hierarchies, resulting in naivete, narcissism, and arrogance. The idealists have become the elite mean green meme with a killer superiority complex. Okay? So here we are, we're at the top of the first tier. We're at the top of the personality development, and you know, by God, we all know that we're superior, right? I mean, we know that it's better to have a worldview where you value everybody, but we're beating people up with it is you know, the point that's made. And you know, when Hillary said about the basket of deplorables, that was a big error, you know, because it's like she secured a lot of votes against her when she said that, because it's like, by God, those are my people, those deplorables. And they're not, you don't understand. So really important to understand that this is the dark side of the green meme, which has so many valuable things in it. So again, looking at the green meme is looking outside of the physical world into something bigger. This is the spearhead into the second tier. This is the exploration of the inner self, of advanced self-reflection, curiosity about psychic powers, and the pursuit of gurus and teachers. Okay, so Hillary, again, she was I think the default progressive candidate. I mean, she was the heir to the throne, right? And but Bernie Sanders was probably the real progressive candidate. And more than half of millennials do not believe in capitalism. Why don't they believe in capitalism? Because it's not working for them. You know, they're seeing this is not working for me. And you know, by the time the next election comes around, we're going to have another whole population of young people that have come on board that can vote. And you know, it's a system that is not working for the young people. So Bernie spoke to that. Bernie really spoke to that. And so again, I said last time that I believe that Hillary has an orange center of gravity. She's brilliant. You know, she's brilliant. She has an incredible, rational, strategic, thoughtful mind. And you know, she was a flower child. She was impulsed by Martin Luther King. She went and heard him speak in Chicago when she was a teenager. And she was an idealist. She went to Wellesley College and became part of that East Coast elite. She went to Yale graduate school, law school. And really became inculcated with all those values of helping the world. So I think that aspirationally, she absolutely is a green, but I think her default is orange. You know, she falls back into it being about me. You know, I would be your president if it weren't for Comey, which is probably true. But nonetheless, her default is to fall back into that orange. So, Trump, I do not represent the world, I represent America. And these two slides, I want you to really take these in because, you know, this is the same man. Whoops, sorry, that's not that man. And so the Trump supporters see this rude, disrespectful man as daring, angry, rich, successful, in-your-face, cunning, swamp-draining, strongman leader, right? So all of this they see for them. He's doing this for me because this is the kind of leader I want, especially if you're if your center of gravity is in that red meme, you're angry, you're mad, you know, you haven't really developed very much. This appeals to you because he's the oppressor leader. And if you're in the blue meme, he is that strong, male, authoritarian. And there are a lot of things not to like about him if you're in the blue meme, but you hate Hillary if you're in the blue meme because she represents all the wrong things. And so he became the default conservative candidate. But they like these things. So a lot of these words are the same. Excuse me, even that gesture, you know, the one finger salute, we see on both pages, which now the progressives find that just incredibly improper, politically incorrect to do something like that. Well, you know, his supporters, they love that because who's he giving the finger to? He's giving the finger to the mean green meme, the progressives. And that's what they want to do too, so they're on board with that. So the progressives see him as angry, rude, disrespectful, petulant, impulsive, bombastic, narcissistic, shameless, swamp stalking, con man, tweeter. You know, it's like, a lot of the same words in there, a lot of the same energy in there, but seen through a really different lens. Okay, so, and again, you know, did I make it clear really how I think Hillary didn't get the vote of like everything below, everything below the orange meme? And so this is really important. If did not vote had been a candidate in the 2016 US national presidential election, it would have won by a landslide. It won more votes than either of the candidates won. 44.37% of the eligible voters in America did not vote. So that means whether you look at it from the Trump side, and Clinton got 28.43%, so about 28.5%. Trump got 27.2%, so about 27%. And, but did not vote got, oh shoot, sorry, well, whatever is left there. And so basically 25% of the country did not choose Clinton. 75% of the country did not choose Clinton because half didn't vote and 25% voted for Trump. And 75% of the country did not vote for Trump because half didn't vote and 25% voted for Clinton. So can you see, there's a lot of discontent in the country. There's a lot of open space there for inspiration. There's a lot of open space there for new leaders to step in and truly inspire something in America. So I want to publicly thank Susan Fangman for sharing some of the most wonderful information about spiral dynamics for me, and this is one of them. This is Bridging the Gap, and this is how you can go up through the memes, and that first level there, that first little cylinder is ego. And when you get to the top of it, you have the opportunity to cross the bridge into that second tier, but you might fall back down again. Okay, you might fall into the gap there. And so if you haven't developed those memes in a healthy way, in a functional way, the tendency will be to fall back down again because there's dysfunction going on in the system. So in order to really bridge that gap, we all want to be clear about clearing our shadow stuff so that we truly are moving into that second tier with everything clear and shining and ready to go. So I stole this from Alex Radcliffe, who said, a quote from the UN, "Never before in the history of the planet has goodwill been so active." What an encouraging thing. What an encouraging thing that never in the world has there been so much goodwill. And 2.5% of the world population, but growing, is in the second tier. And the shift from the first tier to the second is dramatic. It's a quantum leap because there has to be that healthiness of the memes, and there has to be that willingness to step up. So the awareness of the whole spiral appears. This is the first time where really transcend and include means something. Because yes, we've transcended, but even at green meme, yes, we've transcended, but we have the superiority complex. So we still think we're better than and they're wrong. It's still right and wrong. But at the second tier, we start to see that, oh my God, it's all valuable. It's all right. We see how they are right also. So one can see the gift and the pitfalls of each level. And the world conflicts can be sorted out excuse me, with an integral perspective. This is where we're looking for our leaders. And so again, the fractal metaphor that looked at very closely, it's beautiful, but it seems chaotic. When you get the 30,000-foot view, the fractal all of a sudden becomes this very organized system of beauty and organization. Okay, so this image, I just wanted you to see this image because I basically say a lot of the same things here. You know, the quest here is to serve the spiral. It's intuitive, transpersonal, there's flow, freedom. One of the words that's often used to describe people at the second tier is they're authentic, they're real, they're genuine. And Ken Wilber said that if you put a group of people in a room and you had 4 from the lower, the first tier, and you had 1 person from the second tier, everybody from the first tier is going to fight with each other because they all think they're right. But everybody's going to think that second tier person is okay. You know, they might not like them. You know, they might not really think they're a great person, but they're not going to fight with them because why? You know, the second tier can relate to everybody. It's like the second tier can shine out that understanding that, yeah, I get it. I get how you're right too. That's what we want to be doing actively, deliberately, is shining back that reality of, I get what you're about, even if we don't agree with it. Okay, this, we've seen a lot of toroids, and Dwayne had these gorgeous toroids. I actually like yours better because they had triangles in them, you know, that protective element. But this is from Heart Math, and it shows how big our heart field is. It shows how big our heart energy is. And I think you've all had presentations from Heart Math, right? Yeah, and really, really gorgeous research and energy. But again, so we are all the time touching people with our hearts. What's the quality of that heart radiation that we're putting out? Because we're putting it out. You know, we're receiving in and we're putting it out all the time. What's the quality of it? So, and yellow meme also, this is really important. Yellow meme is aware of being a subtle energy being with flows of receptive and transmitting forces and energies. The heart is open and active. Okay, we're at the crown now. In the second tier, we're opening the crown. And so a yellow tier person may not be working with energy actively, but they're aware of energies. And what I want to encourage is that, you know, we've heard so many times this week about how we are being impulsed with a whole new energy from hierarchy, and a whole new thing is being expected of us. And I say yes. You know, say when you have that sense of those subtle energies, it was Rose who said the experimental spiritual energies. You know, it's like hierarchy's playing with the experimental spiritual energies. We should be too. So when we get those intuitive senses, when we start to sense energy around ourselves and around other people, say yes to that. Because when we say yes, we open out more to it. If we say, oh, no, not me. No, I can't do that. That's not me. We close in. We shut down. So, yes, thank you. All right. So Matthew Ricard, the happiest man in the world. Do you guys know this story? Yep. Wonderful, wonderful human being, brilliant scientist, great friend of the Dalai Lama. So Dr. Richard Davidson, do you all know about him? Yeah, okay. Well, so he went to visit the Dalai Lama in 1992. And the Dalai Lama said to him, why do you put so much money and effort into investigating anxiety and depression and the negative things? And he said, I was speechless. I did not have a good answer for him. And so I said, well, it's really hard. And he said, the Dalai Lama said to him, I'm going to send you people to study. And so he sent him his longtime best meditators. And so here is Matthew Ricard, all hooked up, you know, with the EEGs, and they're measuring brainwaves. Well, they found out extraordinary things when they started studying these long-term meditators. Meditators that had meditated for 10,000 to 50,000 hours. And what they found was that they had extraordinary amount of gamma wave in their brains. And gamma wave was something that was rare before that. They hardly ever saw gamma wave. Well, gamma wave is the wave that connects everything. It causes this kind of synchronicity and understanding across the brain. And so that became now a whole new thing of study. And if you look it up on the internet, there's all these things that will give you gamma waves, which Joy will have to tell us if that really works or not. And so, so of course, this is another Alex Gray. The necessity to develop the centers, to bring them into a state of potency and to harmonize them into a unified rhythm. So essentially, that's what we're doing when we're moving up the spiral, is we are developing each one of those centers. And on your, we won't really have time to go into it too much today, but on the handout, on every page of every meme, there is the healthy and the unhealthy. And again, I thank Susan for giving that impulse on that, because she had a lot of great information on that. But there's the healthy version of each meme, and there's the unhealthy version of each meme. And we want to work through our stuff and work through our shadows in order to be shining at every one of those centers, because that's how we become truly useful. That's how we become a true server. And this I included just because it's another beautiful Alex Gray, which shows the solarization of all of those centers. When those centers are truly solarized, what a shining being we are. So how do we recognize people in the second tier? Well, you know, one of them is, what do they believe in? You know, people that have taken the Bodhisattva vow, may all sentient beings be happy and free of suffering. You know, this is a tremendous second tier perspective. It is the not only awareness of the value of people around the world, but it's the wanting goodness for everyone and deliberately working in that direction, which everyone in this room is, which is how I know that everyone in this room is at second tier. And again, I'm not saying that we all live there all the time. I know I don't. But it is a center of gravity for us, for sure. And one of the things that I love about this system is it helps us see what are those qualities. And how can we clear when we drop into something else? Like when I used to visit my mom in Denver, if I was there on Sunday, I would always go to Catholic Mass with her. And early on, I would sit there and just fume for the whole time about how stupid the things were that the priest was saying, and how there was not one line in the Nicene Creed that I could say and believe. And so, you know, I made myself miserable. And when I discovered this, I thought, my God, you know, I could go and just enjoy the beauty of the church, enjoy the music, enjoy the fact that I am making my mother very happy, and actually listen to some things that we could talk about afterwards. So it changed me. This changed me actually because I have a lot of memes going on in my family, and it gave me a way to communicate with everybody in a really positive way. So I'm grateful for that. So our world leaders, Nelson Mandela, again, is a shining example, and he saw in his country that there was every meme active, and that he had to address every meme at the level where it was. And it really took Don Beck to come in, because when he got out of prison, he went right back to the ANC, and he was voted president again, and he started talking like a revolutionary again. And you know, when he started working with Don Beck, he realized that he had to work in a different way. And if you like movies, Invictus, have you seen Invictus? Yeah, fabulous movie, fabulous depiction of Nelson Mandela going through this struggle, and how incredibly generous he was to everyone, and how he influenced an entire country to do it differently. And not perfect, I mean, South Africa right now is in a very dire place, but nonetheless, he left something of a legacy there, and a possibility, in the same way that we have not gotten rid of all the problems in America through Martin Luther King's actions, but my God, what a legacy he has left. So Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." Martin Luther King said, "Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend." And Gandhi said, "First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win." And again, I love Alex's quote, "My life is my message." And for all of us, like it or not, our life is our message. So we want, again, to be really conscious about that, because our life is our message. What are we transmitting all the time? You know, what are we receiving all the time? And also, yes, we can. I didn't put Obama in here, but yes, we can is a second-tier message. You know, it was not about him. It was about, I mean, he did lapse sometimes into it being about him, but mostly it was about we. You know, all of his efforts were for the greater we. Okay, so Mandela, Madiba means father of the nation. He understood and respected the values and needs of every meme, as well as the gifts and pitfalls. He worked to create superordinate goals. Superordinate means everybody can agree on this. To generate integration and cooperation within the spiral, his rainbow nation. Mandela was also willing to use all the tools of the spiral to accomplish his goals of freedom, peace, and prosperity. And he said to his countrymen, he said, we are not a melting pot. We are not a melting pot here. We are a beautiful mosaic of many colors. And actually, this was when Don Beck developed the colors that he put into the spiral, because when he went there, it was one of his early international interventions, and he realized that there was so much about white and black, and he needed to put a new language on it. So he gave these different colors that were about values and intelligences and ways of being, rather than having it be racial, because it's not a racial battle, he said. It's not about racial. It's not about races. This is about values. And again, Yo-Yo Ma, one of my favorite world citizens, Yo-Yo Ma has a great story about how when he was a child prodigy, and when he was 7 years old, his parents said, we're going to move to America. They were living in Paris. He was born in Paris. They were living in Paris. And they said, we're moving to America. And he said, why are we going to move to America? He said, everybody says France is the greatest country in the world. And his parents said, no, America is the greatest country in the world, and we have to go there because you have to express your Chineseness because it's the greatest civilization in the world. So there we have three ethnocentricities right there, right? France is the greatest country. No, America is the greatest country. Well, but Chineseness is the greatest civilization in the world. And so here we have again the rivers and how they were given the status of living entities. So we said this was a purple idea because it is. You know, it's at that purple meme that we understand that everything is a living entity. But it took the turquoise meme. It took the greater expansion of that idea into a worldview that included government and legal systems and ways of making this a law to make it actually happen. Okay, so one of our favorite expressions. Dalai Lama is actually considered to be at the third meme. So all of this is hypothetical, you know, because there aren't really enough people around and it's being studied. Don Beck says almost nothing about coral. Ken Wilber talks a little bit about it. But, you know, it's another quantum leap. You know, we're above the crown now. And so he is absolutely an expression of universal compassion, of being world-centric, of having multiple realities and multiple perspectives. So DK says, the light of the soul is like an immense searchlight, the beams of which can be turned in many directions and focused on many levels. And that's exactly what the Dalai Lama does. And beautiful Amachi, who welcomes all with that hug, just by a hug, just by her presence. And then Aurobindo and Sweet Mother, and again, I thank Susan for bringing Aurobindo into our lives, into our little spiritual group that meets in Colorado. And Sweet Mother wrote at the bottom here, the world is preparing for a big change. Will you help? Okay, I think we all hear the message. And so these are, you know, I love this quote. I think it came from Master Moria, but DK uses it in, oh my goodness, you can't see it there. Let's see if I can change that. Well, it's the rare efflorescence of a generation of inquirers. And, you know, it's a rare experience, but it's got to become more frequent, right? So all of us, let's be the rare efflorescence as well. Okay, so what can we do to increase movement up the spiral? So on the back of your handouts, oh, by the way, I have one extra if somebody doesn't have one. Oh. Thank you. You're welcome. There we go, you're welcome. So on the very last page, it's what can we do? And one of the things that we know for sure is that we cannot push anyone, including ourselves, up the spiral. And if we do, what we tend to do is crystallize. We crystallize, you know, we tend to create resistance because you can't push anybody through it. But the things that we can do are to create empathy, to create understanding. Because when we create empathy and understanding, when we see somebody, when they feel seen, that actually creates that sense of wholeness in them. And when there's more wholeness within any meme, it gives that rounding out where one can then grow up and wake up and emerge into the next meme. So to listen, understand, and empathize. So this little quote here was from an article written by an Afrikaner, a white man in South Africa after the death of Mandela. And you know, there were people that were saying, you know, why are we making this man such a hero? He was a revolutionary, and he was in prison, and so there was some backlash against it. And so he talked a little bit about what a revolutionary he truly was, and he was. And he was a violent revolutionary, and he went to prison for 27 years. But again, he used prison as ashram. He took that time to wake up and grow up himself. And so this Afrikaner said, the deadliest weapon in his revolutionary arsenal was not the gun. In the end, it turned out to be love and the ability to inspire love in others, even us, meaning even us white folks. We were lucky to have such a noble and worthy adversary. And he said that Mandela had this unbelievable charisma that even those who were really hardened against him and were angry at him, and when they would be in his presence and he would just say a few words to them, they would soften into this incredible admiration of him. And he said he had this incredible capacity to remember names, to greet them in a way as if they were friends, and to ask them about their lives. So what a powerful thing. We all can do that, right? You know, to remember people, to greet them as if they're friends, and to care about their lives. He transformed a nation like that. So we can do it. Yes, we can. Oh, I didn't have that one up for you, did I? Okay, well, sorry. There it is. All right, and now, this is a really cool story. Okay, what time is it? All right. We can influence appropriately and wisely. So influence is a very important way that we can move ourselves up by who we choose to be influenced by, but also how we can affect others. And so DK says that goodwill is contagious. And no matter, and this is a great quote that I love, no matter what our attempts to inform, it is our ability to inspire that will turn the tides. Our ability to inspire. And how do we inspire? You know, we really inspire through our presence, through our lives. My life is my message. But this was a great story about Bill and Melinda Gates. A couple years before his mother died, she sat Bill and Melinda down, and it was shortly after he had become the wealthiest man in the world. And his mother said to them, you know, you two have an incredible capacity to do good in the world. And it really had not occurred to him. And in fact, he had a reputation of being just a ruthless businessman, a pirate, that if he could steal something, he would. And, you know, very, very harsh, very red businessman. But he had clearly filled up that orange meme, and he said, if Dad will run the foundation, I will do it. And so he and Melinda, both very, very bright minds, began putting their efforts into data. What's the data? Where should we put our efforts? Where should we put our money? And they decided that it would be on wellness in the world, on health, and on education. And they have poured millions and billions into those efforts. And then they met with Warren Buffett. And I don't know who had the idea first, and maybe Livy, you know, but they created the Billionaires Club. And they made the pledge, and they invited other billionaires to join and to pledge at least half of their wealth to be given to charity either during their lifetime or in their will. And as of last year, there are 154 incredibly wealthy people in the world that have made that pledge. And there's no rule to it. Somebody can change their mind, they can pull out of it, but they've made the pledge. And so this is an amazing green idea. And you know, the Gates Foundation, their tagline is, oh gosh, now I'm gonna, it's about seeing that every life has equal value. Every life has equal value. And so they are influencing. Mother influenced son, son influenced colleague, colleague are influencing colleagues, right? So we're not billionaires, at least most of us aren't. But we have that power to influence. You know, we have that power to influence. And again, with invitation, I think it's so important. And I think that the energetic of it is that if we have the feeling of, I need to influence you, that's probably not with invitation. But if you feel that sense of, you know, I like what I see that's going on in you, what's going on with you? You know, that's an invitation. That's an invitation to share. Okay, presence. So the Dalai Lama, I kept moving him through all of these 5 things that I had on here because I felt like he was an exemplar of all of them. So it's not the words, but the feeling of the heart that creates the miracle. And that's from Master Morya in Heart. So it's not the words, but the feeling of the heart. Well, who does this better than the Dalai Lama? He was invited to be the keynote speaker at a science conference, and there were tens of thousands of people at this science conference, and there was some pushback about, we are scientists, and why are we inviting a religious leader to give a keynote at our talk? But then when they calculated at the end, every person there, went to his talk because he's incredibly magnetic. Even if there was pushback about this is a religious guy and we're scientists, we're rational, everybody wanted to be in his presence. He also has that incredible charisma. So practice joy. So in these days of world pain, let love and joy equally be the keynotes of your life as a group and as individuals, for they carry the healing vibration of the hierarchy. That's from Dinah. And joy, a quality of the soul, is realized in the mind, excuse me, when alignment takes place. So this is a theme that I seek out, actually, in the Blue Books, is joy. And I think that it again, is incredibly magnetic and incredibly attractive, and it's a change agent. Joy is a change agent. And then the last thing is meditate. So Ken Wilber said that over 30 years of researching what makes a difference, what drives people up the spiral, they looked at psychotherapy. That would have been my vote. Nope, didn't do it. They looked at journaling. They looked at transformational workshops. They looked at hatha yoga. They looked at all the things that we would think might make a change in people and drive them up the spiral. None of those made a difference. The one thing that made a difference was meditation. Is that incredible? Is that incredible? And he said that they did research on it, and that someone that meditated in a consistent way for 4 years gained an entire stage. So he said, imagine doing that for 20 or 30 years. You know, you zoom right up to the top and ring the bell. So that was his joke. So as we meditate, we increase our own light, and we increase the light in the world. So what a motivation, right? What a motivation to do that. So I also want to remind us all, and this is Francis here? Francis Donald. This is one of Francis's images. And this is a quote from Cosmic Fire. He says, as the conditions of harmony evolve out of the present world chaos, devas and human beings will meet as friends. So in many ways, he talks about how the devas are there for us, but we have to invite them. You know, they do not operate on free will. They operate on the will of another. And so we have to acknowledge and invite them to join with us. But we have that capacity. They are there. They're willing and wanting to help us out. All right. So, and then, you know, I have this beautiful prayer that Alex shared with us earlier that I'd like to close with, but are there any questions? What time are we supposed to finish? 4:45. Okay, so we've got about 7 minutes. Are there any questions?
But if you want to go over, go ahead.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, thank you, thank you. Yes, Jacqueline. Oh, is there one up here?
Would you comment on the relationship between the third ray predictable soul crisis and its relationship to the meme, let's just say Donald Trump going to the orange meme, and talk about that relationship of the predictable crises of the third ray, creative intelligence?
Yeah, you know, I don't feel like I can comment on that. I mean, nothing. I don't feel like I have an intelligent answer to that. But I think that, you know, maybe this is the answer, that, you know, he's poised, actually. He's poised to go into the next meme, but there's not a guarantee that he will, because he is really crystallized in both of those, in the red and the orange. He's very crystallized there. And he also had the incredible disadvantage of having a pretty dysfunctional childhood. You know, he was raised by parents that his dad was the primary influence, and his dad basically said, there are winners and losers in the world, and we are winners. And if you're not a winner, you're a loser. And we call winners killers. And so that's what he was raised with. So during that blue meme age, when he should have been developing a sense of other, his sense of other became winners and losers. You know, the most dualistic, kind of competitive, negative way that you could possibly learn how to interact with others. A very red way, in fact, to interact. So he didn't have the advantage. And then at 12 years old, because he really was an out-of-hand child that was a bully and, you know, always getting into trouble. Even his dad said, enough. I'm sending you to boarding school, and I'm going to find the toughest one I can find. So he sent him to military school. So he went to military school, and during that really crucial teenage years, when we learned so much about the opposite sex, about ourselves, about our values, he was being inculcated with militaristic values. And one of his cohort of that time said that when he was sent to the military school, that he cried for 3 days. And he cried so hard that they sent him to the infirmary. But that Donald Trump thrived there. He just thrived. You know, it was an atmosphere of competition. There was a prize and a medal for everything, and he thrived there. And so he does not have healthy foundations for that crisis to lead him in a positive direction. And then when he got to that orange meme, I saw an interview of him, I think it was on The Rich and Famous or something, and he was sitting in all his golden opulence, you know, very Atlantean kind of, you know, setting. And he said, you know, they said, is there anything missing in your life? And he said, you know, it's kind of lonely. It's lonely at the top. And, you know, you tend not to have a lot of friends. And, well, duh. You know. So, do you have an idea about that, Jacqueline? Because I don't know that I have an intelligent answer to that.
I would just say that.
Here, you want to come up here?
No, yeah, I've got it.
I would just say that typically in the third ray, one of the crises that in the developmental stages is that there's a lot of web of lying and deceit that has been woven throughout one's life. And it's a survival mechanism.
Sure.
And it's a survival mechanism for the ego, and we all have them, so I'm not making the third ray any worse than any of the others.
Sure.
But that there's that web of deceit, and that the web eventually catches that person, and finally they are caught in that web, and the deceit is public.
Yes, well, and here it is.
And
you
it
know.
breaks them.
Yeah.
And it can break them.
Yeah.
So and that doesn't mean it's predictable. It's not like
Right.
this is in stone.
Right.
But that is certainly one of the aspects of
Right.
that
Right.
ray energy.
Well, I think we're seeing it,
if
aren't
he's
we?
third ray, I'm just
Yeah.
playing with that in
Yeah,
my own
well,
mind.
there's certainly evidence of that. And, you know, it certainly is becoming, you know, the shadow side. In fact, it was suggested that he is living out the shadow of America, you know, and so it's becoming very public. And I think one of the upsides of that is it is really driving the development of mind in the country. And, you know, I heard recently, I know you probably did too, that 94% of the people that voted for Trump still support him. Even with all of the evidence otherwise, they still support him. But, you know, they haven't really seen the promises broken yet. You know, we're a very short way in. And the voting for him was for me. You know, you're going to give back coal. You're going to give back the jobs. You're going to give back our industry. You're going to give back, you know, you're going to build us a big wall. You're going to do all these things. And so those promises haven't been broken yet. So there's still hope that, you know, he's going to, you know, Big Daddy's going to come through for us. But on the other side of it, you know, the progressives, man, have they gotten busy, right? Have we gotten busy? And so, you know, everybody's talking about their internal activists. You know, we've all gotten lit up with what's my part in this? How can I contribute? And so I think really it's a good thing. And in a way, you know, I know there were a lot of people that were like in the first week, let's get him impeached. You know, I think in a way that there has to be some time for this to work out. You know, that there has to be time for that crisis to happen and for it to be a public thing and for those who still support him to see the reality of what's going on. Yes, Gretchen?
Can you speak to anything? Okay. Can you speak to any of the parts of within each of the memes? We have all of our other stuff, and so we fall back, as you said before, at times to that. Anything that it speaks to about sort of what prompts the fallback, or what are ways to notice and maybe move back to the meme that you have more central identification with?
Sure. Great question. You know, any time we're challenged, if we're, you know, meditating and life is good and, you know, we're feeling love for everybody, and then, you know, somebody cuts us off in traffic and it's like, "Ugh," you know, I mean, that can drive us right down there, right? Or you want to smack the guy. And, you know, so I think it's really just those frustrations of life that tend to drop us down. Or, you know, it's like me going to church with my mom. You know, it's like, man, I fell into my own blue fundamentalism. You know, it was my Angel's Wisdom fundamentalism fighting her Catholicism fundamentalism. And I had to see it, though. I had to see, like, wow, I'm doing exactly what, you know, I'm angry at her for doing. So, you know, I think it's any time we get challenged, either with some part of our shadow or out of our comfort zone, you know, that's what drives us down again. Do you have an example?
Some of the same ones you gave.
Yeah, okay. Livy?
Yeah, this is so interesting because I think so many of us could not understand in this election, why would people vote against their own self-interest?
Yes.
You know, people that are poor and they're going to vote and let the rich have all these goodies at their expense.
Yes.
But this is what gets me so excited about this work, because it explains that.
It does.
They vote their values.
Yes.
And this is what Democrats don't understand.
Exactly.
This is this initiative that we're trying to help advance with George Lakoff, who speaks about values being so key. And there are certain things that Republicans understand about this value thing, and also about speaking to people's desire level as opposed to the Democrats speaking mentally. But the key thing is, if you don't connect with someone and have them feel that you care about them, then all the facts in the world make no difference.
Exactly.
So the value thing is key, and this is what I love about spiral dynamics.
Exactly. It's I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, okay.
Any other? Yeah?
I want to ask a question. Are there, do you see the difference what a person is by himself and what he conducts? Because, for example, Dostoevsky was a very difficult person, extremely, but he wrote beautiful things. They have a lot of poets,
Yes.
painters, and so on,
Yes.
which behave extremely,
Terribly. Yes.
no words,
Yes.
but they give us a
Yes.
lot of things.
Yes.
What about the politicians?
Yes.
Because Moria gives overshadowing to all of them.
Yeah.
Could this improve the effect?
Well, yes, and I think that's where Ken Wilber's idea with that lower quadrant there, where he had the lines of development, that someone can have an incredibly high, beautiful, into the second tier expression on the creative level, humanity with the beauty that they're sharing, but they may have not developed a good sense of self, where they're constantly embattled with themselves, or good relationships with others. So that is their gift to humanity, and yet these other things may be absolutely getting in the way of their having a happy life, or of being in relationship in a way that is fruitful. And so that's where we can help. Well, we have to be judicious too about who we choose to help, right? Because if someone is truly locked in a place and they don't want to change, don't waste your time. But really, when there are folks that are struggling and they do want your presence, and I mean presence not only in the sense of spiritual presence, but just presence, just being present with someone, and it's transformative. And so yes, I think that there are. Steve Jobs was one of those people, brilliant, incredible contributions to the whole planet, but terrible person to interact with. He was just incredibly difficult on everyone around him. So I think that the lines of development explain that very well, that someone can be very high, very mature, even second tier, and then be very low in other ways. And that's why Wilber, and Aurobindo actually inspired Wilber in that way, to really be an integral human being. And Aurobindo was one of the ones that said, it is not about, escaping up to enlightenment and then, whoop, I'm out of here. That's a very blue thought. It's like it's the Christians wanting to go to heaven and whoop, I'm out of here, I'm done. But to want to go to enlightenment and be done is the same thing. And Aurobindo said, no, get to that realization and get back down here and divinize the earth, share it, give it to everyone. Which is why he and Sweet Mother made that commitment to stay in their bodies through the fourth initiation. They knew that they had the spiritual wherewithal to accomplish that. They wanted to do that for humanity, to show that it was possible. And so that's an integrated human being. That's an integral human being. Someone that takes care of themselves so that they can be a vessel, takes care of their relationships so that that can be a place to spiritualize, takes care of the planet so that can be a place to spiritualize. You know, I had this experience years ago, and it wasn't even in a spiritual training, but it was in a like a motivational training, and they talked about meeting someone full potential self to full potential self, which is another way of saying soul to soul. And so it's like you stretch out into your field and you meet somebody stretched out into their field. And I was in a women's group at the time, and there was one woman in the group, she and I just never got along. She thought I was weird and that I had weird values. And so we'd been in the group for years together, and we just didn't connect. And so I wanted to explain this to the group, and I really wanted to do it with her because I wanted to connect with her. And so, I sat with her and I explained this, and she went, I feel like you've seen me for the first time today. And I did. She felt seen because I met her soul to soul. And it's incredibly powerful. So I think that's an amazing way to be present with people. And the Dalai Lama does it, with 70,000 people. We can do it too. Any other questions? Yes, Susan.
I noticed.
Do you want to come up here?
When you were talking about your experiences with your mother in church, that's where we're going. It's the same external experience.
Yes.
But Jung said, if we don't change it inside, we have to live it outside.
Yes.
And you changed your inside,
Right.
and that's over.
Yep.
But it's still exactly the same thing in the outer world.
Exactly right. Except it's way better for my mom. Well,
Yes.
my mom has passed, but it was way better for her and better for me.
Yes.
Because I changed. And
That's
of course,
it.
Jung was the master of the shadow work. So, yeah. All right. Any other? Yes. Do you guys mind staying? We're a few minutes over.
Hi, I would just like to ask if you could say something about where Bernie falls in the spectrum.
I would love to hear what other people think about that. I think Bernie was a second-tier thinker. I think Bernie really had the we. I think it was not about him. I think it was really about the greater good. And, Bernie was daring in a lot of ways. To call himself a democratic socialist in America, anybody of a certain age is like, whoa, that's pretty courageous. And, and I think his ideas, they were out there. It's like, and this is the thing, is like within the first tier, everybody is still embattled, which is why, and God bless Hillary, we need her. We need the brilliant mind. We need the brilliant mind who is strategic and is willing to resist, because we need resistance too. But what we really need in this country, and I believe that this is what the 44.37% are looking for, is someone from that second tier that can look at the whole thing and say, let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's do something. Let's find the superordinate goals, the goals that we can all agree on, that are really of value, instead of just singling out things, because otherwise we stay in that embattlement, within that first tier.
So, Ann, could you explain how then Bernie failed? Could you explain why he failed?
Okay, you got to say the question again.
Do I really? Well, can you explain how Bernie failed? The way you explained how Hillary failed.
Okay, I think that there were a lot of forces at work, and I think that there weren't enough that could recognize the second tier. I mean, people have said to me, why have I never heard of this? Why is this not more out there? Well, it really takes a second tier or a very high green meme to really get this work. And if you're not at a higher level, you don't get it. And I think that Bernie was speaking from a level that, number one, threatened a lot of people, and certainly threatened the establishment. And, there were a lot of things that worked. But I think, and also, God bless Bernie, he was not magnetic enough in his personality. There was kind of a curmudgeonly way about him that in some ways was very magnetic and people loved it. But it was also easy for people to brush him off and, and not connect with that. Anybody else?
I'll just comment that I think that Bernie was is. I think Bernie is authentic.
He is authentic.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he says what he means, and he means what he says.
Yep, yep.
And that's very refreshing.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and I think that he not only faced difficulties with all those things you mentioned, but within the Democratic Party.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, there
Right.
was powerful influences
Yes.
that did not want him. They
Yes.
wanted Hillary, so.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. And he was very progressive. You know, he was very progressive. And again, he was progressive in a way that the blue meme didn't like. And if roughly half the country is at the blue meme, it's like that worked against him too. But I think absolutely the forces within the Democratic Party were a force also. Alex?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. This has been so spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
thanks so much. And can you tell us how, if we want to pursue this now, what's the best place to start reading?
Yes, and thank you for that question. I think the best book by Ken Wilber is A Theory of Everything. And it's not one of his fatter books, so it's one of his more accessible books, A Theory of Everything, and Spiral Dynamics by Don Beck. And also, if you like audiobooks, I will tell you, two of my favorite sources of information are an audiobook by Ken Wilber called Cosmic Consciousness by Sounds True, Cosmic with a K, Cosmic Consciousness, and it's a 10-disc set of him in conversation with Tammy Simon, who is the president of Sounds True. And she is so intelligent, and they have a friendship, so there's just this very friendly conversation. And he hits all the high points of his belief system, and he did it about 15 years ago. So, it was when he was well, into his mature expressions of things. And so he really had fleshed out his basic ideas. And he shares it in a very grokkable way. So Cosmic Consciousness is an audiobook. And then Spiral Dynamics is another audiobook by Don Beck, where Sounds True also helped him cull out the key thoughts of spiral dynamics. So it's very listenable, it's very grokkable. The book is also very good, but it's kind of like an encyclopedia. And so it's not as user-friendly as the audiobook is, but I recommend all of those things. Yes?
You mentioned George Lakoff, and
Actually, I didn't. Who
or
mentioned?
somebody.
Oh, yeah,
Olivia.
Libby did.
And work on values. How is
The book that I would say is just terrific is Don't Think of an Elephant, because he analyzes this election and previous elections and talks about things such as values, the patriarchal system of identification, which so much of our country does, why facts don't matter, all these kind of things that we wonder about, and it gives the greatest overview. So I would say begin with that one. Okay. I'm glad you asked, because I didn't mention that book, and it's just terrific. And this is a book that Cassandra and I are focusing on for this training that we're developing.
Yeah, so, and when the training develops, how will we know about it?
I'll let you. She asked when the trainings develop, how will she know about it? Well, we'll be promoting it, and it will be for nonprofits first, and it may well be offered at the Institute of Noetic Science. And maybe online. So, but I'll keep you posted, because we're really pushing to do this, because, we really feel like the Democrats do not understand what's going on here, and they keep repeating the same process, and they keep starting with facts. They always start, here's 10 reasons why, and they haven't connected with the people, and that's just so key, to connect first and listen to them and what do they want. And so, anyway. That's what we're up to.
Thank you, thank you. So I'd like to end then with this beautiful mantra that Alex shared with us earlier. So let's all say it together, and then we'll just do this, and we'll go. So may all creatures be happy, may all be without disease, may all have well-being, and none suffer misery of any sort. May the wicked become virtuous, may the virtuous attain tranquility. May the tranquil be freed from bonds. May the free make others feel free. Ah, bravo. Thank you. Thank you. Love you all. Thank you. Thank you.